First off, I want to give a huge shout out to you for making my last video the most liked and viewed on this channel by far. This is just the beginning of my YouTube journey and there is so much more to come. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Click down below, it's quick and easy. That being said, let's get into today's topic, and it's very exciting for me to talk about for 3 reasons. Number 1, Mark Cuban. I love his ownership style with the Dallas Mavericks. I love Shark Tank. I think it's one of the best TV shows out there. If you haven't seen it already, highly recommend it, especially if you have an entrepreneurial mindset. Number 2, trickle up economics. I never really understood trickle down economics. If you give rich people and corporations more money and then expect them to spend it and stimulate things, they already have money. If they wanted to buy stuff, they would already. Should definitely give it to the people that need it. And number 3, $1,000 every 2-week stimulus checks because, well, free money. While Mark Cuban is not a politician, so I don't see this proposal going through Congress anytime soon, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to me, especially with the 10-day requirement he puts inside, and we'll get to that in a little bit. For right now, let's start from the top. So Mark Cuban, he's a billionaire entrepreneur. If you don't know him, Google him. Very interesting story of his career. He called out what basically everybody knows. The PPP, the Payroll Protection Act, didn't work. I mean, providing loans to businesses is just kind of like delaying the inevitable if there's no consumer demand. So he wants to stimulate the consumer demand. Makes sense to me. He also wants to create jobs by creating a federal tracking and tracing program, which, you know, we kind of need that with this whole epidemic going on. If we're not tracking and tracing this pandemic, then it's only going to get worse. Not to mention, this is going to create more jobs, which is something that we need right now with unemployment skyrocketing. So let's talk about the stimulus check part of this program. So it goes that all 128 million households in the United States of America could receive $1,000 every 2 weeks. The stimulus check would be given for the next 2 months. And here's the kicker, and this is what I was talking about earlier in the video. It's use it or lose it. If you don't spend that money in 10 days or less, then you lose it. And I love this requirement because it forces the money back into our economy like that in 10 days or less. I mean, that forces people to spend it. If you don't need to spend the money, then you can maybe spend it on more non-essential services because those businesses need our support as well. Let's face it, without consumer demand, a lot of businesses are going to go under just because of the uncertainty alone. So by giving this $1,000 every 2 weeks for people to spend as they see fit, it's going to give a jolt of demand into our economy when we need it the most. So I'm sure you're asking, what's the price tag of all this? Well, totaled in, it's about $500 billion, which may sound like a lot, but remember the CARES Act that went through before that gave us one $1,200 check per person and $500 per child cost $2.2 trillion. There was other things involved in it, don't get me wrong, but $500 billion is less than 25%, less than a quarter of the cost of that previous act. And with this 10-day requirement, it would really just jumpstart things. Hopefully this would keep businesses alive and help employment rise organically. Now, how does this stimulus check plan compare to some others? Let's go through the list. So we had the CARES Act, which passed, and we got the $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for married couples, and $500 for dependents. So for that one, as I stated in my previous video about it, I got $2,900 because for married couple, $2,400 plus $500 for dependent. I got that for Chloe. I did not get the $500 for Colin because I didn't file my 2019 taxes, which reminds me I should probably file my 2019 taxes. If you haven't done that, you should do it too. Next on the list is from former 2020 presidential candidate Andrew Yang, and that was the $1,000 a month. It's a little bit different because his was universal basic income, and that was just forever for every U.S. citizen 18 years and older. Obviously, with the forever portion of that is more controversial and less likely to go through. The next one on the list, we had the EMPA, the Emergency Money for the People's Act, the $2,000 a month stimulus proposal, and talked about that on a previous video as well. If you missed it, check it out. And that one obviously depends on the length of time of that $2,000 a month. So, you know, there's proposals 6 months, 12 months. I don't see anything that long being feasibly possible or feasibly accepted and able to pass. If something like that happened, I would see something maybe like a 3-4 month time frame, and that obviously would be very welcome for the majority of the American people. And last on the list that we talked about in the last video is the HEROES Act, and that was pretty similar to the CARES Act, where you had the $1,200 check for people, but the main difference is where the CARES Act gave $500 per dependent per child, this one would give $1,200 per dependent per child, up to 3. So that means if you were married and had 3 dependents, I mean, you get a pretty sizable check. Comparing these stimulus check proposals together, one major difference between them and Mark Cuban's is like the dependents and the income limitations. His is just $1,000 per household, period. Doesn't matter how many dependents, doesn't matter how much money you make. So that's a big difference. The other key difference would be the 10-day spending, use it or lose it requirement. So the big question is, will there be a second stimulus check? Which proposal that we talked about will be the one that goes into effect, or will there be a new proposal? A lot of this would depend on Congress working together, which I don't see happening anytime soon because they're far apart on a lot of issues like, should it be a monthly check? Should it be a one-time check? Should it be no check at all? If states reopen and the economy just gets back on track naturally, then maybe we don't even need another stimulus. Maybe we get that V-shaped recovery that a lot of people have been talking about. I don't see that happening, but it could, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Another thing that should happen is you should like this video if you haven't already for the YouTube algorithm. Let's not just stimulate the economy, let's stimulate restless riches. That being said, what do you guys think? Which stimulus package is going to be put into law? Write down below if you think it's going to be the HEROES Act, the EMPA, Mark Cuban's proposal, or is there going to be a new proposal, or is there going to be no stimulus at all? What do you think? Write it down in the comments below. I'm really curious and excited to know what you're thinking, so please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.